my next guest here, he is one of my favorites because I see him do videos on social media. It just makes me chuckle. He makes me laugh, and that's important. Senator Jim Runestad is here. Jim, welcome back.
Good to hear your voice, Steve. Yeah, there's only one way of dealing with this catastrophe in Michigan. You have to have some humor, or you'll go stark crazy. So, glad to be out and talk about the governor's latest fiasco that she just signed into office.
Stunt. My mother would call it a stunt because here's the thing. I don't even know if it would pass muster because, look, we have the right to evaluate elections. It's in our Constitution of 1963, isn't it? We have a right to say, look, we want to recount. We have concerns about fraud, whatever it might be. We, as Michigan residents and Michigan citizens, we have a right to ask. You can't just write a bill and say, well, we don't care about the Constitution. Can't do that, can you?
Well, you can't, and I'm sure this is going to get adjudicated exactly with the parameters that you just outlined that are in the Constitution. But this bill is overwriting almost 70 years of election law. There's Senate Bills 603 and its companion 604. And they strip away the time-honored checks and balances that have been in place for almost 70 years. And so she just struck out all the existing provisions in our Michigan laws that protect the elections. And we have here a board of canvassers in every county. We have a board of canvassers in the state. They, by law, have to be bipartisan. There has to be two from the Democrat Party, two from the Republican Party. They take a constitutional oath of office, just like I do as a senator. And her bills have stripped away almost all the powers and duties these individuals have to maintain elections integrity. So it's just despicable what they're doing. The current, or the previous, I should say, Board of Canvassers had the not only ability but duty to investigate potential fraud or violations of the law. So if there was violations or fraud that were brought to the Board of Canvassers, they could investigate. They had subpoena power. All that has been taken away. They can't examine ballot boxes. All they can do is simply look at the vote count, even if it was completely fraudulent, and say, yep, that was the number of votes that came in, and that's all that they can do.
So let me ask you this, because this is the important question here. How does it get? Does there have to be a case before you can challenge it? Does somebody have to say, I want to investigate fraud in whatever election, whatever it might be, and they say, no, you can't do that because the governor signed this? Do you have to wait until there's an actual case, or could you adjudicate this right now, Senator?
Well, what happened is if there was any evidence of fraud, if the Board of Canvassers felt it was sufficient evidence of fraud, that it was entirely up to them, they can do a complete investigation. They can start doing examination of ballot boxes. In Detroit, for instance, 79% of the ballot boxes, or the precincts in Detroit, could not be recounted because of all kinds of irregularities. The numbers of the recount and the tabulation were completely different, mostly an overcount of votes. Well, how is that happening? Almost all of these are coming in as an overcount of votes. And so this is pandemic with the city of Detroit. They always have irregularities. Well, the Board of Canvassers has the ability to say, wait a minute, how is this happening? And why are these ballot boxes broke open? Now, none of that can be investigated. It has to be turned over to the highly partisan prosecutor in the Wayne County, which is the city of Detroit, or the biggest far-left attorney general in the nation's history, Dana Nessel, neither of which are going to take any complaint of election fraud from a Republican against a Democrat entity in the entire state of Michigan. So it's now in the hands of people who are highly, highly partisan. Almost every one of these irregularities are the same suspects coming up time and time again in every election, and now they can refer it. They can't actually do any investigation to refer anything consequential. They just have to say, well, there's an irregularity here, or we heard this complaint, which is going to go into the round file by these Democrat prosecutors and attorney general.
Right. It's a terrible, it's clear what it is. It's a game to game the system. They think that they have an advantage here. And the problem, as you know, Senator, is if you challenge one of these things, then there's a process, and none of it happens fast. By the time you get to a conclusion, even if you're right, the election's already been certified, somebody's already in office, the chance of overturning the election is somewhere near zero. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, it's not only that. They have now tripled the cost to do a recount. So when Donald Trump wanted to do a recount in 2020, now it's not only the election day, you have the absentee recount and you have the early voting recount. So you have now 3 recounts for every precinct, and they went from $250 to $500 for each. So instead of $250, it's $1,500 per precinct. They make it a felony if you interfere, whatever that means, with the activities of the recount. If you ask a question, is that interfering? It's completely undefined. And this is such a rotten, horrid bill that it's typical for Michigan. Michigan is known to be the least transparent and thus, consequentially, the most corrupt state. People aren't aware of that. We're the most corrupt state in the nation.
Yeah. Got to leave it right there. Greatly appreciate it. Jim Runestad, keep the videos coming because they entertain me and probably a lot of other folks, sir. Thank you.
Will do, Steve. Thank you.